What would you do if a swarm of menacing figures stormed onto your property, driven by their own warped motives, oblivious to the danger they were descending into? A glamorous barn in the heart of the countryside would seem an unlikely battleground. And yet, one fateful afternoon, the tranquil landscape would transform into a scene of chaos and courage that would redefine the very notion of defense. Picture this. The sun hangs high, bathing the golden fields in a soft glow, casting long shadows as it creeps toward the horizon. It's the kind of day that lulls you into a false sense of security. A breeze dances through the rows of corn, rustling the stalks like nature itself whispers secrets. To the untrained eye, it's just another ordinary day on the farm. But as the saying goes, appearances can be deceiving. Behind that rustic veneer lay a fervent spirit. The farmer knew how to harvest more than just crops. He reaped resilience and ferocity. Enter the motor crew. A group not fond of complacency, they specialized in leveraging their numbers and speed, executing ambushes with terrifying efficiency. They lived by the motto, strength in numbers, chaos in tactics, and they fancied themselves unstoppable. But on this day, they would soon discover the folly of underestimating their adversary. You see, those who dismiss the allure of the countryside often forget its hidden depths. Farmers aren't just cultivators of crops. They possess a wealth of knowledge about land, weather, and survival. Our protagonist wasn't just a farmer. He was a decorated veteran, a shadow of a man who had walked through the fires of war and emerged on the other side with skills honed to precision. He had survived the horrors of battle, carved into his psyche an intimacy with danger and strategy that few could fathom. While they saw a barn, he saw a battlefield, and as they approached with unrelenting fervor, he slipped back into the mindset of a soldier. The motor crew's roaring engines shattered the serene quiet of the countryside, their laughter mingling with the chaotic revving of motorcycles. With a confidence that belied their impending misfortune, they rolled onto the property, thinking the rustic setting ripe for plunder, a quick score, an easy win. There's an intriguing social psychology concept at play here, the fundamental attribution error. These men attributed their success to their strength while overlooking the resilience that lay within the heart of the farmer. They couldn't see past their assumptions. How often do we fall prey to similar short-sightedness? How often do we underestimate those around us simply because of a facade? As the crew approached the barn, the sunlight glinted sharply off the metal of their bikes. They surged forward, eyes gleaming with a sense of entitlement, yet within the barn, the air hung thick with tension. The farmer took a moment to pause, the chaos fading into stillness as he drew on his reservoir of experience. He surveyed the scene with the calm of a chess player contemplating his next move in a deadly game. World-renowned psychologist Daniel Kahneman once said that intuition is automatic, fast, and often misleading. Our farmer embodied this. His instincts, trained from years of facing insurmountable odds, now became a crucial asset. They arrived expecting a simple confrontation. Intimidation and fear would guide their hands. Little did they know, they had unwittingly engaged a master of resilience, a tactician who understood how to wield the element of surprise. With a deliberate clarity, the farmer reached beneath a pile of hay, pulling out not just typical gardening tools, but a well-maintained arsenal. Because this wasn't just a preparation for a rogue band of thieves. It was a defense against any and every threat he had ever encountered. The age-old proverb rings true, expect the unexpected. And for him, every battle he had faced echoed in the hollow sounds of the countryside. Every drop of sweat in the fields mirrored a drop of blood shed in the trenches. Now, imagine the clash of ideology, the explosive conflict juxtaposed against the backdrop of serene pastures. The motor crew, whose bravado fueled their approach, saw themselves as predators while the farmer transformed into a vigilant guardian of his land. The ambush they planned was systematic, yet they approached an opponent unlike any they had ever known. As they dismounted, the sounds of laughter evaporated, giving way to an uneasy tension as the farmer stepped into the open, his stature embodying both calm and authority. He called out, his voice deep and resonant like thunder rolling across the hills. It pierced through the good-natured bravado, forcing the crew to reevaluate their target. The instinct to dismiss him as just a farmer was quickly fading into distant memory. In that moment, power shifted like the wind. Behavioral scientist Angela Duckworth has long championed the concept of grit, the indefatigable passion for long-term goals. Grit is not something one simply possesses. It is a cultivated skill born out of struggle. And here stood a man molded by both hardship and unwavering determination. The motor crew, now faced with the intensity radiating from their adversary, found their confidence wavering. The unbreakable spirit of a farmer prepared for battle sent ripples of uncertainty coursing through them. In a heartbeat, he pivoted to strategize. With precision born of countless battles, the farmer had laid traps that melded seamlessly into the countryside he loved. A thicket of corn concealed mechanisms crafted from everyday machinery, a spinning fan adorned with sharp blades, a makeshift catapult harnessing elastic strength, and fences fortified to control movement. He had become one with his land, and underestimating its power was akin to underestimating the ferocity of nature itself. Caught in this web of psychological warfare, the motor crew exchanged glances that betrayed their bravado. They were predators, attacking was their forte. But they were now standing on unpredictable ground, one riddled with ingenious traps that blurred the lines between nature and combat. Would they be able to engage with cunning or fall victim to their own arrogance? The rumbles of bike engines faded into the growing silence. Sensing their hesitation, the farmer embraced his surroundings. Even the wind held its breath, as if the very atmosphere aligned behind him. He knew they thrived on intimidation. So with determination etched onto his face, he launched into action. A swift movement, a calculated strike. The first trap sprung, a cacophony exploded as the fan sliced through the air. A scream erupted from one of the would-be attackers, a piercing sound that echoed across the fields where only moments before there had been laughter. Suddenly, the countryside erupted into chaos. The motor crew felt their numbers drain as they stumbled into the hidden traps. Here was the unexpected isolation-bred panic. One member rushed forward, bulldozing into an unseen wire, falling to the ground as the crew lost their cohesion and confidence. What once seemed a simple conflict had evolved into a battle with high stakes, and as he engaged with each marked opponent, the farmer revealed the primal psychology of survival. The underlying truth was clear. When people are pushed into corners, they often respond with unpredictable ferocity. The motor crew had assumed their size made them the apex predators, yet the farmer's grit had prepared him for years of mental and physical conflict. He tapped into the emotional reserves honed on a battlefield and now turned them against his unsuspecting foes. Stress, the ultimate catalyst, drew strength from desperation, forcing the ambushers to confront what lay in wait. As they fought back against their unseen perils, bewilderment and fear danced across their faces. Each time one of them stumbled, it became a spiral of chaos, propelling them deeper into confusion. In combat, unpredictability injects a helpless energy. Their collective psychological state began to fracture. Panic snaked through their hearts like venom coursing through their veins. It was in that adrenaline-fueled frenzy that the farmer emerged once more into view, a figure both fearsome and respected. His strategies played out like a symphony of command, resonating through the off-silent fields that had long been untested. For every snarl within the motor crew, the farmer's deep-rooted instincts led him to an even deeper level of tenacity. He wielded not just weapons, but command of the territory, a manifestation of psychological warfare that would have made even the most seasoned tactician proud. As the clash continued, the stakes bubbled to a boiling point, and the motor crew began to realize what it truly meant to engage with someone who had mastered the art of the unexpected. With every trap they fell victim to in a truly poetic fashion, the tides of confidence shifted. They had come seeking riches and conquest, but now their hunger lay exposed, the hunger to survive. With sweat lining his brow and determination etched into his face, the farmer embraced the power of the land he fought to protect. As chaos reigned, He surveyed the vast expanse of his surroundings, revealing an element of surprise that transcended the physical, the clash of ideologies and motives, as shades of dusk began to color the landscape. Evil would not prevail today. Victory belonged to those who were ready to fight, and within this reckoning, the farmer found not just a struggle to defend his way of life, but salvation for his spirit. What would unfold next? Would the motor crew succumb to their own arrogance, or would the landscapes they dismissed become a canvas for unforeseen resilience? As the weight of battle bore down on both sides, tension hung in the air, begging for release, a story that had yet to find closure. What if a seemingly mundane barn on a secluded countryside was about to become the focal point of a confrontation that would make a war movie look like child's play? What if, within that unassuming structure, a storm was brewing, one that would catch the attention of a vicious gang known for their ruthlessness? But it wasn't just any farmer inside. This wasn't a story of helplessness. It was one of grit and precision, a tale of unconventional warfare. Imagine a late afternoon in autumn. The vibrant canvas of orange and gold painted the horizon as leaves danced in the crisp breeze. A simple barn, weather-beaten but standing proud, loomed against the backdrop, a home, a workspace, a sanctuary. To the average eye, it was merely a rustic remnant of simpler times, a quaint image lost in a sea of vast fields and rolling hills. But to those who knew its keeper, it was much more. It was a fortress, a treasure trove of secrets, and a last bastion of hope. As the sun dipped lower, the distant roar of engines pierced the tranquility, sending birds scattering from their perches. A gang known only as the motor crew surged forth, a band of marauders clad in leather and steel, seeking their next target. They reveled in their reputation, each member on the lookout for glory in the form of spoils, laughter flowing like gasoline on fire, each laugh a taunting echo of their violent intent. But here's where the psychology comes into play. They embodied the classic overconfidence phenomenon, a cognitive bias where one's subjective confidence in their judgments is reliably greater than their objective accuracy. They expected an easy score. After all, who would defend a weathered barn in the countryside? What they didn't realize was that this farmer housed a spirit forged by fire, a veteran, tempered by scars, equipped with a mind for strategy honed through experience. The farmer, with his calloused hands and stormy gaze, stood inside that barn, a stoic figure framed by the fading light. Memories flashed before him, the thunder of gunfire, the frantic chaos of combat, the unyielding loyalty of comrades fallen and forgotten. In that sacred space, he had recreated his battlefield, but this time, it was the land he cherished that needed defending. He was no stranger to ambushes or tactics. Survival was in his blood. As the motor crew rolled into view, their engines growled in unison, a brash display of machismo, a blatant underestimation of the opponent they were about to engage. At that moment, they wielded the narrative of predator and prey, but the battlefield is often dictated by the mind as much as the weapon. The farmer understood this truth. He had fought the battles that raged within. What unfolded next can only be described as a psychological chess match played in a theater of war. The motor crew dismounted, swaggering as if victory was already in their grasp. But as they approached, something shifted in the atmosphere, an invisible charge, a precursor to the storm. Moments stretched as if time itself were savoring the impending confrontation. The farmer exuded unwavering calmness, standing poised at the entrance of the barn. When they saw him, their initial confidence fluttered like a fragile leaf caught in a gale. There's a psychological concept called the primal scream theory that suggests when confronted with danger, people often revert to instinctual survival modes. The farmer stood there, embodying this instinct, transforming the ambush into an opportunity to unleash the fury of a warrior long suppressed. Crew underestimated him, their laughter suddenly dying in their throats, replaced by the cloying taste of fear. He leveled his gaze, a depth of understanding blooming within. In that microsecond, he shifted from being merely a farmer to a guardian of what was rightfully his. He called upon the emotional fortitude built over years of combat, a wellspring of inner power that could sidestep the chaos of his attacker's bravado. Like a seasoned general approaching his troops, he scanned the land before him. He had cultivated defenses just as carefully as he sowed his crops. Every footstep of the would-be assailants brought them closer to hidden traps woven into the fabric of the barn's surroundings. The mental image of a predator hunting for easy prey crumbled. This farmer was more than he appeared. He was the storm cloud gathering strength beneath a sunny sky. And then the first strike came, not from the motor crew, but from a steady hand wielding purpose. With a swift motion, the farmer triggered one of his many ingenious traps. A concealed net crafted from fishing line and farm twine sprang to life, ensnaring two of the closest attackers. Their surprise morphed into chaos. The chaos birthed panic, a psycho-emotional response that began to unravel their collective confidence. The ground shifted beneath their feet, and the monsters of their bravado began to fade. In that moment, they were not the hunters, but the hunted. Suddenly, their laughter was transformed into yelps of shock, the thudding of boots giving way to the thumping of hearts racing in fear. The power dynamics of this conflict shifted with dramatic swiftness. The ambush was on, but it wasn't the ambushers who planned it. It was the unsuspecting farmer maneuvering the pieces on a board they couldn't see. What this farmer embodied was grit, a quality highlighted by psychologist Angela Duckworth. Grit gives rise not just to tenacity, but to an unwavering belief in one's ability to confront what's ahead. Every tendril of fear that met the farmer's resolve was met with the kind of calculated strategy he had mastered in a lifetime of surviving against the odds. To these men, who relied on numbers and noise, he was a phantom in the night, a harbinger of consequences. In a frantic rush, the motor crew scrambled, each member trying to regain control in a scenario spiraling out of their hands. Laughter lost its luster and fear reigned, like the first storm clouds unfolding over a calm sky. They had assumed this would be a quick fight over an easy prize, but they were trapped in a web of their own making. Suddenly, the farm was a labyrinth. Each corner revealed layers of psychological warfare that fed off their escalating dread. The traps had been meticulously laid, but the farmer's true artistry lay in his ability to read their movements, to anticipate their every instinct. A move here, a twist there, each action perfectly synchronized like a well-rehearsed ballet of war. Social psychologists often discuss the idea of social dominance orientation, which informs how individuals perceive their standing in situations of power. The farmer embodied the essence of the underdog, but not in a pathetic manner. Rather, he operated within a framework of unexpected resilience, willing to turn the tables on an aggressor who once wore the crown of confidence. With military precision, he moved through the barn, the world around him falling away as adrenaline surged within him, igniting every fiber of his being. His mind flickered back to his years of service, flames of memory igniting his resolve. In that moment of chaos, he became the embodiment of war, finding solace in the storm as the barn transformed into an arena of strategy. Each trap was an extension of his experience, simple farming equipment turned deadly instruments of defense. A shovel, once used for tilling soil, turned into a swift weapon. A discarded pitchfork became an extension of his will. Armed with ingenuity, he played the role of soldier and strategist, matching the motor crew's chaos with calculated precision. And so the dance of battle surged on, echoing across the fields as the sun dipped lower. The motor crew was no longer united. Their swagger had fractured, supplanted by panic. They became bogged down, ensnared in their own failure to assess the threat they had so carelessly approached. The psychological shift was palpable, transforming the barn from a target to a bastion of fortitude, a hallowed ground where survival reigned supreme. As discord unfurled among their ranks, the farmer struck again. Such mastery of his surroundings seemed almost mythical, like a character stepping out of legend. The chaos had become an almost poetic confrontation, one man defending his cherished land against the tide of marauding men who had lost sight of their humanity. But this was not merely a battle over land. It was a clash of spirits. In a burst of adrenaline-fueled determination, The farmer positioned himself behind an aging haystack, his heart thundering in rhythm with the fight unfolding before him. He was aware of the psychological phenomenon known as the bystander effect, an idea rooted in social dynamics where individuals in a group feel less inclined to intervene in dire situations. But in that moment, he was not a bystander. He was the protagonist of this narrative, imbued with a palpable urgency to act, to protect, to fight. And as chaos continued to unfurl, the realization dawned on the motor crew. They had wandered into a lion's den, and they were woefully unprepared for what lay ahead. Their bravado had blinded them to the truth, that this battle was not just one of weapons. It was a test of wills where the stakes had suddenly climbed into the realm of survival. On both sides, adrenaline coursed through their veins, but while one sought to assert dominance through chaos, the other had become a bastion of strategy and strength. The farmer had embraced the storm within, embracing not just the battle but the metaphorical war between predator and prey. But fate held an unpredictable hand. The farmer's final act, a culmination of all that was laid before him, the traps, the strategies, the heart of a warrior had yet to unfold. Just when all seemed lost for the motor crew, one amongst them rallied the others, emboldened by desperation. They huddled together, torn between aggression and retreat. Would the farmer's immeasurable resilience triumph over the surge of their renewed courage, or would the tide shift yet again, pushing both sides toward an unpredictable climax? They were reaching a crescendo. The very air crackled with unresolved energy as the background was painted with the brush of conflict. What lay ahead was uncertain, but with every heartbeat, the stakes climbed higher amid the enchanting whispers of the wind carrying secrets of the impending storm, teasing a resolution yet unwritten. Would this standoff of ideologies lead to fleeting victory or devastating downfall? The barn held its breath, standing as a silent witness to the drama painted upon its weathered walls, a theater of war where both heart and mind clashed in a battle for survival, on the very threshold of night. What happens when echoes of laughter fade into the distant rumble of approaching engines, and a quiet countryside is transformed into a battleground? Imagine a seemingly defenseless barn nestled amid the rolling hills of rural America, becoming the epicenter of an ambush that would blur the lines between predator and prey, chaos and strategy. This was no ordinary farmer. He was a guardian forged by experience, bleeding tenacity and resilience, waiting for the storm that was about to unfold. On a crisp autumn day, the sun hung low, casting golden rays over the fields, artfully illuminating every blade of grass. Little did the locals know that beneath the horizon, a storm was forming, a gang known as the Motor Crew, a notorious group notorious for their audacity and ambition. Riding in on thundering motorcycles, they sought not just a score but an exhilarating thrill, audaciously believing that the world was theirs for the taking. They thrived on intimidation, their reputation built on chaos, wielding momentum like a weapon. But as we'll soon see, the human psyche can be a deceptive ally. The barn, with its weathered wood and peeling paint, appeared to belong to a bygone era. Yet in reality, it was a repository of secrets, well guarded and sturdy as the spirit of the man inside. The farmer, tanned, rugged, and quietly intimidating, had long since grown accustomed to the cycles of life and death, nurtured by the earth he tended. But he was not just a custodian of crops. He was a soldier, a combat veteran with a lifetime of discipline etched into his very being. As the motor crew approached, a cacophony of laughter mingled with the growl of their engines. But the din soon faded, replaced by an eerie tension that hung in the air, as palpable as the foliage rustling against the wind. The motor crew believed their strength lay within their numbers, their bravado obscuring the truth of their surroundings. They couldn't perceive the storm brewing in that barn, a quiet fury masked by patience. Now, let's consider the farmer. Each scar on his body told the story of battles fought and won, each wrinkle on his face a testament to endurance and survival. Inside that barn, he meticulously honed an arsenal not just of tools but of strategies. He was not simply prepared. He had lived through the fires of combat. His breaths were measured, steady, and as he watched the gang advance, he slipped into a mental state forged from years of experienced combat readiness. Imagine that very moment. The scene is poised on the edge of chaos. The motor crew dismounts, brushing off the dust of their road trip, completely unaware of the gravity of their miscalculation. They saunter forward, fueled by misplaced confidence, eager to claim the prize they have envisioned. But the farmer, quietly observing from the shadows of his sanctuary, feels the shiver of adrenaline coursing through his veins. A wave of familiarity washes over him. He had been here before, staring down the maw of chaos. Pausing at the barn's entrance, the crew exchanges glances, utensils of bravado replaced by a sense of curiosity. They believe they hold the cards, that the barn is merely a treasure waiting to be pilfered. But the farmer embodies the essence of the underdog, his spirit more ferocious than they could possibly understand. And yet, even he knows that the psychology of warfare isn't solely dependent on firepower. It's about observation, planning, and, above all, timing. The motor crew, emboldened by their numbers, moves in unison, a formation built on perceived strength. But what happens when that strength meets an unyielding defense? The farmer takes a deliberate breath, the air still suffused with the sweet scent of spring grass mixed with earthy undertones. He invokes within himself a sense of grit, that indefinable quality laid bare by psychologists like Angela Duckworth. It's an unwavering determination, born from the depths of struggle and the refusal to succumb to fear. A sound of footstep, barely detectable, the softest crunch of gravel. In that fleeting moment, intuition and instinct meld into action. With an air of calmness belied by the storm bubbling within, the farmer readies himself. He remembers countless nights spent planning, rehearsing scenarios that might call upon his skills. A farmer, yes. The ambush was not his, it was theirs. They had walked into his world, an arena built around fields of corn and hay, where they would discover the true meaning of underestimating their opponent. And oh, how quickly the momentum shifts when faced with someone who refuses to be a victim, someone who has learned to fight back. Then, with a swift movement, he triggered the first trap, a cleverly concealed net constructed from old fishing line and farm twine, a humble representation of ingenuity. It sprang to life, ensnaring two of the crew before they could react. Their celebration transformed into chaos, confusion painting their faces as they struggled against the entanglement. The air crackled with energy, a blend of astonishment and fear, a distinctive shift that drastically altered their outcome. What is it about a moment's realization, the terror coursing through veins? Without a doubt, the crew believed they were in control, yet that illusion dissipated as the realization of vulnerability smacked them like a harsh winter gust. What once emanated confidence was now wrapped in panic. They began to disintegrate, the group fracturing like fragile glass under pressure. Social psychologists would call this the choking under pressure phenomenon, where those once skilled find their limbs weighed down by expectation and fear. The barn transformed from a target into a fortress, each haystack and beam marking the territory of a man unwilling to yield. This wasn't a simple confrontation. This was a power struggle, a test of wills. The farmer, finding unity in his environment, became a guardian spirit on hallowed ground, leveraging every bit of knowledge and experience against the invading chaos. Yet, the motor crew was not without tactics themselves. They regrouped, each member fueled by desperation to reclaim what they thought was theirs. They were goat horns and bluster, desperately searching for a way to reverse their plight. As one member yelled orders, their energies swirled again into a semblance of organization, clashing against the quiet resolve of the farmer. The barn echoed with the sounds of uncertainty, the crack of boots on wood, the rustle of clothes, the quick intake of breath. Every flick and twist of the farmer's movements reflected a past steeped in the chaos of battle. What many would see as mere tools, a shovel, a pitchfork, became instruments of retribution. He understood deeply that warfare wasn't only about physical confrontation. It was about turning the environment itself into a weapon. With each step, he demonstrated what psychologists refer to as perceptual narrowing, understanding that when facing stress, one's focus sharpens, bringing forth a heightened awareness of immediate surroundings. And so, the storm intensified. The farmer danced through the chaos, controlled yet fierce as he unleashed a flurry of calculated strikes. The barn served as the perfect battlefield-abundant cover, an atmosphere thick with strategy. With a well-timed maneuver, he pivoted behind a haystack, utilizing the shadows and the position to catch them off guard once more. As the crew scrambled, their movements grew erratic. The grip of fear strangled their camaraderie, causing fractures in their once cohesive effort. They yelled for one another, but their connection weakened with every moment spent on the defensive. The farm was alive, thrumming with the pulse of survival, and it fortified the farmer, urging him onward. It's a curious thing, isn't it? What psychologists have identified, time and time again, is the fragile thread that holds groups together in the face of adversity. As the farmer pressed forward, he not only engaged with physical tools but wielded the intangible weapon of resolve. One of the crew members, desperate and fueled by adrenaline, charged toward the barn entrance, but the farmer anticipated the move, shifting with lightning speed, creating a force to reckon with. The resulting clash resembled a metaphorical dance of survival that played out against a backdrop of barn walls and wisdom. The motor crew wasn't merely facing a farmer. They were engaging with a fully fledged combat strategist with nothing to lose. In a crescendo of action, the farmer struck with precision. He emerged like a thunderclap, unleashing years of discipline against the tide of raw chaos. The crew's bravado crumbled like old leaves underfoot, revealing the stark reality of vulnerability. But even as the challenges heightened, there stood a pivotal point, a potential turning tide, a crescendo waiting for resolution. The gang had suffered losses, yet still had the fight within them and appeared willing to regroup. The air was saturated with tension, the intricate dance between despair and resilience poised to unfold. Would the farmer's unwavering determination force them into submission, or would the desperate cries for unity ignite a fire that propelled the motor crew into unpredictable action? As darkness fell, engulfing the scene in a cloak of shadows, the outcome hung precariously in the balance. The barn, once a mere structure, now transformed into a theater of war held its breath, as whispers of fate danced through the air, beckoning both parties toward an unpredictable climax. The battlefield had only just begun to reveal its secrets, and for each piece of confidence the farmer commanded, another piece of chaos brewed on the horizon. What happens when echoes of laughter fade into the distant rumble of approaching engines, and a quiet countryside transforms into a battleground? Imagine a seemingly defenseless barn nestled amid the rolling hills of rural America, becoming the epicenter of an ambush that blurs the lines between predator and prey, chaos and strategy. This was no ordinary farmer. He was a guardian forged by experience, steeled with tenacity and resilience, waiting for the storm that was about to unfold. On a crisp autumn day, sunlight dipped low on the horizon, casting golden rays over fields of corn and wildflowers, artfully illuminating every blade of grass. Little did the locals know that beneath this pastoral serenity, a storm was brewing. A gang known as the Motor Crew, notorious for their audacity and ruthless ambition. Riding in on thundering motorcycles, they sought not just an easy score but the thrill of conquest, audaciously believing the world was theirs for the taking. Their reputations was built on chaos, a momentum they wielded like a weapon, but as we'll soon see, human psychology can be a deceptive ally. The barn, with its weathered wood, stood as a sentinel of another era, less a treasure trove than a symbol of resilience, containing secrets far beyond its peeling paint. Inside, the farmer, tanned, rugged, and quietly intimidating, had become accustomed to the cycles of life and death, nurtured by the earth. But he was not just a custodian of crops. He was a soldier, a combat veteran who had learned that the most powerful weapon is often the strategic mind behind it. As the motor crew roared closer, a cacophony of laughter mingled with the growl of their engines. The din soon gave way, replaced by an eerie tension that hung heavy in the air, as palpable as the foliage rustling in the breeze. This tension is a powerful psychological force, not unlike the fundamental attribution error, where the crew attributed their confidence to strength in numbers, blinding them to the hidden storm lurking within the barn. Now, let's consider the farmer. Each scar on his weathered hands told a story of battles fought and won, and each wrinkle on his brow was a testament to endurance. This man was not an easy target. He was a warrior steeped in wisdom and experience. Every flick of his eyes told a tale, a silent playlist of possible strategies coursing through his mind as he observed the approaching gang. He stood ready at the threshold of battle, knowing that the process of warfare is not merely physical but rooted in the psychological battlefield, honed through years of solitude and heartbreak. With a measured breath, the farmer slowed the heartbeat of the moment, communing with the earth beneath him as if it were an old friend reminding him of every fight he had endured. Shadows stretched long behind him, framing a man shaped by war and emboldened by conviction. As the motor crew dismounted, bustling forward with misguided confidence, he could almost taste their arrogance, bitter and overripe like fruit left too long in the sun. To them, the barn was merely a prize, an easy capture that promised immediate gratification. But the farmer understood a truth that they could not see. Each moment is a lesson in resilience. Standing on the precipice of their miscalculation, he felt the winds of fate shift. And just as predators learn to adapt to every developing situation, so too did the farmer prepare to reclaim the narrative. What followed next was akin to a symphony where the notes of fear clashed with the booming chords of power. The farmer, calm and deliberate, positioned himself at the entrance. The motor crew, emboldened by camaraderie, swaggered forward, flushing with bravado, but he saw the cracks beginning to form in their demeanor. A growing uncertainty echoed in their eyes as they noticed the barn's uncanny stillness. In mere moments, chaos erupted. One of the crew, feeling brave, charged toward the entrance, but the farmer had anticipated the move. With the precision of a skilled tactician, he sprung into action, unveiling his first hidden trap, an old fishing net cleverly concealed among the piles of hay. That net ensnared the first would-be assailant, who was suddenly caught mid-stride, stumbling to the ground as laughter turned to cries of confusion and panic. This sudden shift in power dynamics was electrifying. The air grew heavy with the realization that their strength was a facade, a mere costume hiding deep vulnerabilities. Psychologists understand the implications when individuals are thrust into high-pressure situations. It's what they refer to as the choking under pressure phenomenon. The motor crew, wrapped in a cocoon of arrogance, found their confidence crumbling. Their screams filled the air, clashing with the earthy smells surrounding them, reminding the farmer that he was not just defending a barn, he was defending a way of life. As the chaos unfolded, it became a sunlit battlefield infused with powerful undercurrents of fear and desperation. The atmosphere crackled around the barn, transforming from mere structure into a crucible where will and skill met face to face. The crew struggled to regroup, their movements growing frantic as they scrambled to disentangle themselves from their own arrogance. With every chaotic twist and turn, the farmer leveraged his expansive knowledge of the land surrounding him, his mind turning each moment into an opportunity. His tools, once mundane implements of farming, became instruments of warfare. A pitchfork was wielded like a spear of destiny, while a shovel transformed from a harbinger of tilling soil to one of calculated strikes. As mantra of survival echoed through him, he sprang into action with an agility born of instinct. The barn itself became an ally, a trusted companion painted in hues of earth and wood, supporting him at every step. In this world of chaos, the very environment he had nurtured through years of labor now mirrored his resolve, wielding agency of its own. Yet the motor crew, not easily overcome, regrouped. Their laughter evolved into shouts of defiance, a feeble effort to reclaim control amid uncharted territory. Panic twisted their reasoning as one of them yelled out commands, desperately trying to forge a semblance of order amidst plunging chaos. It's fascinating how in crises, the bonds of cohesion can either strengthen or cause irrevocable fractures. The gang was swirling around like a tornado, thrashed by the winds of uncertainty, their fate woven in the fabric of their collective psyche. The farmer felt an energy suffusing him, a determination grown from years of struggle, amplifying his senses, making time stretch beyond its natural limits. Each member of the crew, high on bravado one moment, plummeted into a chasm of confusion the next. And as they advanced cautiously, the farmer read their movements, playing them like a masterful chess player, anticipating their next futile attempt. The barn transformed before their eyes. It was no longer a mere structure, but a fortress rising amidst the glory of the countryside. The farmer understood the psychological implications of his environment, weaving traps and strategic points seamlessly into the narrative of conflict. What they had deemed a prize was quickly morphing into their prison, as they became prey to a force they had underestimated. Imagining himself as a keeper of secrets, the farmer melded deeper into the rhythms of the barn, using his knowledge of terrain to heighten the stakes of the conflict. He became a phantom figure in the shadows, moving without sound, a whisper of purpose, making them question their approach as they surged forward. Would they be lost forever in their delusion of simplicity, or could they rally once more? Then, amidst their frantic attempts to reconfigure themselves, he struck again. His heart raced as he utilized a discarded pitchfork, swiftly moving through the air with calculated precision like a surgeon on the brink of suturing a wound, saving life from the brink of demise. Every move made reinforced his belief that each strike carried the weight of his lived experience, translating training into action. The barn became a theater of resilience, reflecting his spirit like a mirror. The chaos they brought with them could do nothing against the fervor sparked deep within him. Their unity, once a source of strength, had begun to shatter under the relentless force of calculated defiance. They were literally fighting with one hand tied behind their backs, as the clever tricks embedded in the barn turned the tide against them. With every logical strike, the crew's morale eroded further. The utter disbelief of their misjudgment started to take its toll. Fear morphed into anger, anger turned into desperation, and with that desperation came more mistakes. It's a powerful psychological concept, how fear can often trigger fight-or-flight responses, igniting irrationality against a backdrop of survival. That desperation is indeed a wild card and unpredictable ingredient in the mix that often leads to chaos. The farmer, now reveling in the nature of battle, understood the art of manipulation, the way that confidence shifts and changes throughout conflict. He merged his instincts with the environment, transforming the barn into a labyrinth of tactics and precision, a fortress that ensured his survival. Just for a moment, the winds howled, whispering secrets of the terrain, warning that vulnerability and strength often walk hand in hand. But even as fear gripped the hearts of the attackers, hope sparked to life among them. Whether born from anger or desperation, the sense of unity ignited a flicker of determination. They reoriented, realizing they had to take a stand, to confront the unseen warrior defending what they sought. Now, the question remained. Would the farmer's unyielding resolve subdue them entirely, or could the flames of desperation within the motor crew reignite their ambitions, driving them deeper into the conflict? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the barn, the outcome hung thick in the air like a fragile glass ornament, waiting for a breath to shatter it. The barn whispered secrets of the struggles that lay ahead, a theater of battle poised on the brink of revelation. With each moment, the stakes escalated, unspooling danger and opportunity into an electrifying crescendo. Would this confrontation of ideologies culminate in victory for the farmer or dignified chaos for the crew? The narrative spun forth, teetering on the edge of fate, as the battle raged on, each heartbeat resonating as it carried their lives forward into the uncertain abyss. What if the image of a humble barn in a quiet countryside wasn't just a relic of a simpler time, but the crucible for an epic standoff between chaos and resilience? Picture this: a gang of marauding bikers known as the Motor Crew, notorious for their audacity, turns their sights on a local farmer. They see an easy target, a joke waiting to be played out. But what lies beneath this facade of vulnerability? What happens when an unassuming farmer, with a heart forged in the fires of battle, prepares to push back with a ferocity most cannot fathom? The sun hung low in the sky, enveloping the fields in a warm, golden light. It could have been mistaken for any other idyllic day, birds chirping, the wind softly whispering through the tall grass. But as the roar of motorcycle engines tore through this pastoral tranquility, the reality of the day shifted dramatically. The motor crew, fueled by recklessness and a hunger for dominance, approached like a storm on the horizon, oblivious to the anger that brewed beneath the surface of the farmer's calm exterior. They rolled into sight, clad in leather, the glimmer of chrome catching the evening light, exuding confidence and bravado. These men knew the power of intimidation and relied on it heavily, their reputation preceding them. They relished the rush. Each roar of the engine felt like an anthem of invincibility. But just as the lion underestimates the hoof of the antelope, they had foolishly underestimated their prey. Inside that weathered barn stood the farmer, a figure as sturdy as the old wood around him. Lines carved deep into his face told tales of struggle and survival. He was not just a farmer, he was a warrior. The land had raised him, and the soil knew his blood, every drop a testament to battles fought under the sun and threats confronted head-on. This man had weathered storms both natural and personal, and beneath his seemingly placid exterior lay a reservoir of strength that had long been waiting for the moment to rise. Imagine that moment, the palpable tension coiling in the air like a tightened bowstring. The motor crew dismounted, their laughter echoing off the barn's walls, mingling with the rustling of corn in the wind. They gathered in a tight circle, confidence burning brightly, but all at once, the farmer stepped into the threshold, dark clouds of resolve gathering around him. The transition from mirth to seriousness was almost tangible. He embodied both authority and caution, a human wall standing between them and whatever they thought lay before them. The psychology of the situation was anything but simplistic. The motor crew had entered what psychologists refer to as an illusion of impact, wherein their belief in their strength eclipsed any idea of vulnerability. They laughed at the farmer, dismissing him as just another simpleton wielding tools instead of weapons. Yet, what is striking about human psychology is that often our underestimations can lead to the most unexpected consequences. He took a moment to breathe, inhaling the smells of the barn, hay, sweat, and something more primal. Drawing on his military training, the farmer summoned memories of calculated responses, of conflicts where the fiercest opponents didn't always win. With a steady heart and fire in his eyes, he prepared himself for the inevitable confrontation, for he had faced worse than this before. And as if nature itself had attuned to the tension in the air, a breeze whispered through the barn, capturing a moment with it, the flicker of determination ignited in the farmer's chest. Was this just another fight? Or was this destiny calling, urging him to rise against adversity just as he had done in the past? Suddenly, like a dam breaking, the motor crew surged forward, emboldened. They bounded toward the barn, ready to strip it of its assets, whether that be tools, supplies, or sheer dominance over yet another unsuspecting victim. Their approach was clumsy in hindsight, fueled by adrenaline and overconfidence, traits that had led to many of their successes in the past. The gang hardly imagined the failure lurking beneath the surface of their own assumptions. The first of the marauders reached the entrance, grinning, thinking victory was a mere breath away. But just as he stepped across the threshold, the farmer uncoiled from his position, as if propelled by unseen strings. In one deft motion, he activated the hidden mechanism. Out from the shadows erupted a concealed trap, a barrage of nets that snagged the first biker, dragging him down into a tangle of ropes as he yelped in disbelief. Fear washed over the others, defiance and arrogance crumbling like dried leaves swept away by an unexpected gust of wind. Suddenly, what had been a confident ambush transformed into chaos. The laughter was snuffed, replaced by shouts of confusion and alarm. The air, once filled with the sounds of bravado, now echoed with the panic of men caught unawares. This was the moment when expectations collided with reality, an essential lesson in the unpredictable nature of power dynamics. What psychologists refer to as the bystander effect began to unfurl among them. Their group dynamic, once rooted in confidence and camaraderie, was now tinged with the fear of failure and the instinct to preserve oneself. The uncoiling string of chaos shifted from a simple robbery to a desperate struggle for survival. Each member found themselves questioning their resolve, their bravado twisting into self-doubt as the reality of their vulnerability settled in. But this was only the beginning. The farmer felt focused, his adrenaline now surging. The instinct of a veteran ignited within him, every lesson of discipline swirling together like a cyclone, directing his movements. He may have looked like a simple farmer to the untrained eye, but in his heart, he was the embodiment of purpose. This was a man who had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had blinked first. With swift movements, he darted behind some hay bales, using the cover to his advantage. He employed tricks learned from those who had fought before him, men who knew the weight of a fight and the delicate dance between life and death. The barn itself transformed into a weapon in his hands, every crate, every tool a means to carry out the offense against those who wished to take from him. And there he was calculating, watching as the motor crew struggled to regain their footing. They huddled together like sheep trapped in a storm, uncertainty etched across their faces. This was not the scenario they had envisioned. Overconfidence had been their undoing. It sparked a realization that their unity was faltering. Their bravado was crumpling under the weight of fear. Imagine, adrenaline coursing through their veins, every shout becoming a sin against the pride they once wore like armor. The very thing that built their numbers now threatened to tear them apart. In that moment, the farmer knew he held the reins of power, not through sheer force, but through the strategic mind honed by years of discipline. The next trap he set was nothing less than masterful. A simple shovel, once used for dirt, became a weapon of choice. A quick flick of his wrist, and he launched it forward, forcing another punk to stumble, kicking up dirt in disarray. The trap did not just ensnare a body, it shattered the spirit of the crew, each misstep further weakening their collective resolve. Not one to let an opportunity go to waste, the farmer pushed forward with the exhilaration of someone who had spent countless hours honing their craft. Each attack was a manifestation of calculated reckoning, striking not just the body but the very morale of the invaders. In combat, there's a delicate interplay between physical force and psychological prowess, and here the farmer was working to exploit that very element. With each biker locked in battle, they remembered the golden rule of warfare: never underestimate your opponent. The battle unraveled, and the emotional weight slung over them like an anchor weighed heavily on their minds. The rising tension communicated through their twain expressions, leading each to surrender a piece of their confidence as they faced the reality that this would not be a simple heist. Faced with the unpredictability of their situation, one of the gang members began to rally the others. They shouted over each other, fear turning into desperation as they sought to reclaim order from their own chaos. Yet, in their desperation, they lost the advantage they once relied upon, fracturing into fragmented units instead of a unified whole. It was a psychological tipping point, an upheaval that sent ripples through their ranks, revealing the fragility of their perceived power. They raced with the reckless abandon of cornered animals, grasping at anything that might lead to survival, turning quickly from predators into victims. The barn, alive with the spirit of competition, sat at the center of this spiraling vortex, a witness to the culmination of the confrontation spilling forth. The farmer's previous calmness transformed into a forceful presence, wielding the very nature of adrenaline and determination. He had encountered resistance before. This was simply another opportunity to demonstrate that unseen strength could outcompete sheer bluster. But just when it seemed the tide might fully turn in the farmer's favor, a sudden shout pierced the chaos. One of the motor crew had rediscovered their bravado and launched an assault, rallying the others into a chaotic charge, attempting to take the scene by brute force. Could their desperation spark a resurgence, or would it only serve to dig them deeper into the pit of their own downfall? The moment hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty, as paths of fate converged in a storm of chaos. In this tumultuous blend of human nature, what lay ahead was destined to be a meeting of wills, a clash of ideologies where the foundations of survival and brotherhood would be put to their ultimate test. The barn, once a symbol of pastoral tranquility, now became the very arena of confidence, fear, and the indomitable spirit of those brave enough to fight back. As shadows lengthened, the scene poised to erupt, pushing all involved toward a confrontation that promised to redefine their understanding of survival and strength. What would happen next? Would the farmer's newfound dominance quell the gang, or would the impending storm from the crew force the conflict into a new, unpredictable direction? In that weighty silence, a spectacle loomed unwritten, yet electric with purpose, where the lines between predator and prey began to blur in the fading light. What happens when the echoes of laughter fade into the distant roar of motorcycle engines, and a seemingly tranquil countryside becomes the stage for an unexpected showdown? Picture this: a rustic barn standing proud amid golden fields, a harmless relic of rural life, until the day a notorious gang of marauders known as the Motor Crew rolls into town, seeking to turn tranquility into turmoil. But lurking within those weathered wooden walls is a farmer, not just any farmer, but a guardian shaped by the flames of war. What unfolds next is a classic battle of wits, reflecting the very nature of human resilience and the instincts that drive us to protect our own. The sun hung high in the sky, drenching the landscape in a warm, inviting glow. The fields, alive with the whispers of corn swaying gently in the breeze, painted a picture of pastoral serenity. But that harmony would soon dissolve, replaced by the discordant rumble of engines that sliced through the air like a knife. The Motor Crew, reckless and brazen, approached with the swagger of a king on a throne, their leather-clad bodies casting long shadows on the ground. To them, the barn was an easy score, an unsuspecting target ripe for plunder. They dismounted, laughter spilling out in reckless abandon, unaware that they had crossed a line, breaching the sanctum of a man who understood the power of his land better than they could imagine. Inside that barn, the farmer stood a sentinel, watching the scene unfold with a gaze forged through years of hardship and grit. He wasn't just a man of the soil. He was a veteran, a soldier molded by the crucible of conflict, and the very ground they sought to conquer held stories of survival that could have filled volumes. A question lingered in the air: how often do we underestimate those who appear weak? The Motor Crew, intoxicated by their own bravado, had not taken the farmer into account. It's a phenomenon studied in psychology, what social psychologists call the fundamental attribution error, wherein people attribute the behaviors of others to their character rather than to their circumstances. They saw a farmer, and in their minds, they had already labeled him a victim. What they failed to recognize was the kaleidoscope of experience that shaped this man. As the crew swaggered closer, the farmer's heart slowed, his breaths deepening. Each thud of his heartbeat echoed the lessons learned in the line of duty. He recalled his time in the military, where survival bore little resemblance to the romantic notions painted on screens. The reality of battle was raw and visceral, united by a singular code: never underestimate your opponent, no matter how harmless they might seem. In this ordinary barn, he began to prepare for a confrontation he neither wanted nor sought, but one he was ready to face head-on. The world outside the barn suddenly shifted. The crew's laughter was drowned out by the screech of brakes, and the sound of heavy boots thudding against the ground became deafening. Fueled by adrenaline, they barreled toward the entrance, knives glinting wickedly under the sun. The farmer swallowed his tension, tapping into the mental reservoirs that had been filled over years of training. He was no longer just a farmer. He was a strategist, plotting a course through the thickening fog of chaos that enveloped him. At that moment, social psychologist Daniel Kahneman's insights on intuition resonated within him. Kahneman highlighted that while intuition may feel like a natural response, it could just as easily lead one astray when faced with danger. The farmer understood this vividly. He had danced with intuition throughout his life, and now it guided him again, honing his focus on the terrifying presence standing outside his sanctuary. With an agility that might surprise anyone who had seen him tending to his fields, the farmer activated a trap he had set. Hidden amid the hay bales, a fishing net sprang to life, ensnaring the first biker, his face washed with shock as he was pulled down into the earth. Pandemonium erupted as confusion reigned among the crew, their confidence swelling like a balloon only to be punctured at once by the realization that they had underestimated their adversary. Fear surged, and the sound of laughter became screams echoing against the barn's weathered walls. It's fascinating how perceptions shift in moments of crisis. The motor crew had expected a simple score but found themselves ensnared in a cataclysm of their own making. Their hunters were now the hunted, running in disarray as the atmosphere thickened with desperation. The farmer's wisdom was evident. He had trapped more than just a body. In enacting his defense, he had stripped them of their perceived control. Adrenaline coursing through him, the farmer felt alive, tapping into every mental and emotional fiber that had been sharpened through years of conflict. He remembered the people he fought for, their faces, their laughter, their sacrifices, each face fueling his resolve. He could sense the shift in power dynamics. It was palpable, an electric undercurrent coursing through the air. This wasn't just about protecting his land. It had morphed into a battle for resilience, a dance with destiny staring down the barrel of chaos. Incrementally, the farmer transitioned from defender to strategist, anticipating each move from the beleaguered crew. One twisted around the barn, barking orders, while another attempted to dislodge his comrade from the net, of futile effort that only tightened the web of entrapment around them. This was where psychological resilience intersected with tactical mastery, a combination that would prove to be the turning tide. But even as chaos erupted, the farmer fought to remain grounded in the moment. Moments like these reveal our true selves, shifting from passive observers to active participants in our own destinies. He channeled his experiences, and in the haze of battle, he felt the whispers of the land guiding him. The barn transformed into a fortress, layered with traps that spoke of the same grit that had shaped him into the man he was today. Meanwhile, desperation fueled the motor crew's attempt to regain control. They bellowed instructions, fragmenting into disconnected factions, a strategy that in moments of pure terror often leads to panic. Social psychologists refer to this as the loss of agency, wherein individuals retreat into themselves, rendering collective movement into chaos. They became cornered animals, their bravado quaking, each movement saturated with urgency. And then it happened. Their unbridled momentum came crashing down, a collision of bravado and reality as the farmer unleashed the full spectrum of his defenses. A simple pitchfork became an extension of determination, wielded with precision that shocked the crew into silence. The psychological impact was immediate. One of the crew members stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief. Some cried out for retreat, while others, entangled in their collective bravado, pressed on, erroneously believing they could turn the tide back in their favor. In the midst of this unfolding chaos, the farmer found a rhythm, a pulse that pulsated through him and out into every movement he made. He utilized the very barn that had served as his sanctuary. It now transformed into a living, breathing embodiment of his resolve. He reflected on his own battles, the days of sheer survival where each choice led to either victory or defeat. Here, his instincts sharpened further. This was not merely a struggle for property, it was a confrontation between strength and resilience, greed versus honor, chaos against control. And then an incredible moment of realization gripped the farmer, a moment laced with the essence of human nature. His heart raced not with fear but with exhilaration. Psychology teaches us that the fight or flight response often amplifies the resolve of individuals faced with insurmountable odds. He was living proof of that principle. Just as his hands gripped that pitchfork, he knew that truth well. Survival favored the prepared, and he had been preparing for this his entire life. The crew, cornered and disoriented, scrambled further still as he became a ghost of retribution, leaping from shadow to shadow within the barn. Each step was calculated, each movement a carefully orchestrated dance amid chaos. Yet amidst their disarray, a member shouted, rallying the others, eyes igniting with determination. A primal response ignited, pushing them toward one final charge. They felt the adrenaline surge within them, the instinct to fight flaring alive like a beacon in their darkest hour. Would this desperation forge a newfound unity among them, or would it plunge them deeper into chaos? The farmer recognized the delicate balance of fear and courage. Decisions made in the heat of battle often shift the tide more dramatically than any weapon ever could. As the crew regained some semblance of composure, their collective resolve flared once more. What lay before them now was nothing less than a clash of spirits, a battle erupting at the intersection of uncertainty and conviction. As the barn stood witness to this epic confrontation, thick with tension and possibility, the stakes only increased. The echoes of laughter had faded, leaving behind a landscape transformed now, requiring endurance, ingenuity, and an unyielding heart. Could the farmer's unwavering determination extinguish the flames of chaos that surrounded him, or would the crew's newfound resolve be enough to break through the barriers he had so carefully constructed? Caught in that moment, the world spiraled into chaos, the energies shifting like winds in an impending storm. The outcome of their battle danced on the knife's edge, both sides fighting for their stories to continue, for their legacies to unfold. As the sun continued its descent, shadows deepened, casting long fingers of uncertainty across the field, beckoning them toward inevitable confrontation. A moment poised to reshape their understanding of survival, strength, and fortress built not just of bricks, but of the grit embedded deep within the soul. What was to come hung heavy in the balance, ready to shatter or solidify the lives entwined in that confined space, waiting for fate to throw the first punch of this unforeseen collision. What happens when a predator underestimates its prey? The answer lies within the walls of a humble barn in a secluded countryside, where an unexpected storm was brewing. A tale of chaos met with resilience, a farmer unwittingly caught in the crosshairs of a vicious ambush. But this wasn't just any farmer. He was a man forged in the fires of conflict, and his land held secrets that would soon be revealed. Picture a crisp autumn day, bathed in golden sunlight, a picturesque scene that belied the violence lurking just beyond the horizon. Here came the motor crew, a fierce gang known for their boldness and recklessness, their motorcycles thundering as they rolled into the quiet of the countryside like a dark omen. They were not just in search of easy pickings. They craved a thrill, a power trip that accompanied their notorious reputation. And what better target to conquer than a solitary barn, seemingly unguarded? As they approached, the crew's laughter pierced the tranquility of the day, filled with bravado and a sense of entitlement. Yet, every seasoned predator knows the danger of overconfidence. They were about to take a gamble on a game they didn't fully understand. Inside that barn, the farmer was not merely waiting. He was observing, infusing every breath with the wisdom of someone who had been tested by fire. This psychologist's playbook teaches us about the fundamental attribution error, the tendency to attribute others' behaviors to their character rather than understanding their circumstances. The motor crew, under the influence of their own bravado, dismissed the farmer as merely an obstacle to be overcome. But what they missed was the fact that he was a guardian of his land, scarred but unbroken, his spirit forged in a crucible of survival. As the sun blazed overhead, illuminating the rustic charm of the barn, the farmer stood inside, his eyes squarely fixed on the approaching threat. Memories flooded through him, invoking the noise of past battles, the adrenaline spikes of combat situations, and the intimate understanding of threat. He inhaled deeply, centering himself as adrenaline filled his veins, the moment crystallizing into sharp clarity. And today was certainly not going to be easy. He was aware that his every action would be scrutinized, judged through the lens of the motor crew's arrogance. With every thump of their boots drawing closer, he prepared himself not just for combat, but for a psychological warfare that would shatter their assumptions. With a fierce precision, he set about securing his defenses. The barn transformed into a bastion, each wooden beam a testament to his resolve. Instinctively, he recalled lessons from the battlefield, where preparation often meant the difference between life and death. The barn might seem ordinary, but within its walls lay a trove of tools, even weapons, that he could wield against those who sought to take everything from him. Their overconfidence, buoyed by the thrill of conquest, blinded them to the stark reality that stood before them. The farmer was not a mere victim waiting to be crushed. He was a tactical strategist ready to defend what was rightfully his. Then, as if offering up a silent prayer, the farmer prepared his first line of defense. The tension in the air thickened, a palpable silence descending as he steadied his breath and activated the first of his traps, a fishing net artfully concealed among hay bales turned deadly ambush. It sprang to life, ensnaring the first member of the crew, who let out a shout of surprise and panic, spilling forth a cascade of chaos. Fear blossomed where confidence once reigned. The other members, thrown off their game, scrambled back, their laughter quickly snuffed out as the warm afternoon was replaced by icy dread. This sudden shift was drastic. The balance of power had been disrupted by a single, calculated move. For the crew, learning to navigate the chaos became a frantic attempt to regain their footing, a lesson in underestimating an opponent who, just moments before, seemed weak and predictable. In those moments, the farmer felt rejuvenated. The adrenaline was intoxicating, his body responding with a life of its own. He recalled moments from his service, how chaos had become second nature, using instinct and training to fend off threats that had once loomed over him. The barn, now a fortress imbued with purpose, allowed him to harness his full potential, every measurement, every angle, honed to perfection. What ensued was a dance of strategy against blind aggression. The crew scrambled to find their momentum, running around in disarray as the reality of their predicament began to solidify, a mental spiral driven by fear. Social psychology reminds us how fear can erode group cohesion, a concept proved here as confusion mimicked an infectious disease, spreading quickly among the attackers. Suddenly, the strong became weak, their power diluted amid the undeniable chaos. As the farmer repositioned himself amidst the chaos, he felt the rush of purpose surge through him. Clay pots, old tools, and simple farming apparatus became instruments of warfare. The barn now whispered with the resonance of the tumult, suffused with a potent blend of chaos and precision. He had honed his skills to meet the moment, and every thought pushed him deeper into the fray. He was not just fighting for his property, he was fighting for dignity. With unwavering determination, he launched into action. A pitchfork became an extension of his will, wielded with precision as he struck at the nearest biker. Surprise and pain etched themselves in their features as the reality of this confrontation crystallized. They had rolled into his domain thinking they could easily dominate, but now they were waking up to the brutal truth. He was far from the victim they had imagined. As the barn echoed with the sounds of struggle, he noted how the crew began to fracture further. Once a united front, they became individuals consumed by varying degrees of panic and aggression. It's a profound aspect of human psychology. When ties weaken under pressure, individual motivations surface, plodding down treacherous paths that often counteract collective goals. With fear steering their actions, they forged themselves into splintered units, each act of aggression weakening the fabric of their unity. The farmer moved like wind, utilizing his environment to anticipate their maneuvers, becoming the very embodiment of both predator and protector. He felt the strength of years gone by, urging him onward. Every strike, every maneuver was imbued with the urgency to reclaim control, to teach these would-be conquerors the consequences of overestimating themselves. It was an exhilarating confrontation, a blend of instinct and ingenuity, where every fleeting moment served as both lesson and revelation. With each fight of instinct, he drew deeper into the annals of his past, recalling nights spent training under the stars, crafting every response with meticulous attention to detail. The barn wasn't just shelter, It was a sanctuary of memories, a capsule holding the determination he had built over a lifetime. And then, under the weight of urgency, one of the crew members shouted for a regroup, a desperate call to regain the upper hand. But in the grip of chaos, such requests often fed further into anxiety. The dissolving threads of teamwork threatened to spin out of control as their emotions seeped into their decisions. It was striking how quickly a once unbreakable bond could rupture. This served as proof of the frailty of confidence when pressure mounts, a lesson he had learned well and now wielded. In those final moments leading up to a major confrontation, the very air thickened with anticipation. Would the crew's renewed cries for unity bolster their efforts to reclaim control, or would it spiral further into panic and despair? The psychology of urgency grips the heart. It invokes both fear and courage, often crisscrossing within seconds as individuals rise to the occasion or fold under pressure. The farmer stood at the threshold, poised for the onslaught, ready for whatever came next. The barn had transformed into a sacred ground, a testament to everything he had ever fought for: his home, his dignity, his spirit. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, shadows flickered across the ground, creating a stage for the next act of this unexpected drama. Would the cunning and resilience of a seasoned warrior be enough to fend off the invasion, or would the crew's desperate attempts ignite a ferocity that would challenge him at every turn? Beyond the wooden walls, the world held its breath, teetering on the edge of destiny, grasping for clarity amid the swirl of chaos and uncertainty. As the threads of conflict twisted tighter, the unexpected loomed on the horizon, begging to be revealed. Would this confrontation end in redemption, or would it plunge them all into an abyss from which there would be no return? The answers were out there, waiting, lurking just beyond the threshold of the barn, as something had to give. What happens when the confidence of a band of marauders collides with the unyielding spirit of a forgotten protector? On a seemingly ordinary day in the heart of the countryside, a bustling motor crew ambushes an innocuous barn, thinking it the perfect target for their mischief. But what they don't know is that within those weathered walls hides a seasoned warrior, a farmer who has faced down far worse than their reckless bravado. The stakes: life and death, pride and survival. The sun hung high, drenching the wheat fields in a radiant golden glow, painting a picturesque scene that belied the chaos about to unfold. A solitary barn stood like a guardian amidst the rolling hills, its paint chipped and wood worn, a testament to years of labor. For the average passerby, it was a tranquil remnant of pastoral life, but to those who knew its keeper, it was much more. As motorcycle engines roared in the distance, laughter erupted from the crew, daring, mocking, completely unaware of what lay ahead. These weren't just ordinary bikers. This was the motor crew, notorious for their audacity and exploits in a world where intimidation and chaos often reigned supreme. They approached the barn with swagger, confident in their numbers, and the sense of entitlement that late-night runs can bring. After all, how could a humble farmer possibly pose a threat to a band of hardened men on their roaring machines? This illusion of superiority is a classical example of what social psychologists call the Dunning-Kruger effect, where individuals with low ability at a task overestimate their own competence. They underestimated their opponent, believing the farmer to be just another soft target. Within that barn, however, stood a man shaped by experience, an unassuming farmer. Yes, but also a decorated veteran, his life molded in the fires of survival. As the crew neared, the farmer gripped the handle of a pitchfork, feeling the familiar weight in his hands like an anchor in the storm, grounding him in purpose. He drew a deep breath, the air thick with hay and sunlight, and became acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. Every glance out the barn door revealed swaggering bikers, overconfident in their approach, their laughter tumbling through the air like a cruel breeze. To them, the barn was merely an easy score, a prize ripe for the taking. But they had embarked on a miscalculated gamble, and tonight the stakes raised higher with each rev of an engine. The farmer's mind flickered back flashes of his youth spent on this land, of late nights under a canopy of stars, and the rhythmic hum of diligent work. He had spent years cultivating not just crops but resilience, learning that toughness is built over time, forged by hardship, then tempered in the fires of battle. It was this very mental strength, this grit and determination that surged within him, urging him to protect what was his. The barn stood as both sanctuary and battleground, a fortress worse than any enemy he had faced. And so, when the motor crew finally crossed the threshold into his domain, it began. The farmer swiftly thrust into action, making the barn's defenses come alive. Here's where human psychology reveals its complexity. The surprise attack triggered a cascade of effects. The crew members, previously elegant in their confidence, found the burgeoning chaos crumbling their bravado. The first biker stumbled headlong into a trap, a hastily concealed net that ensnared him in its clutches. His yelp of shock pierced the air, triggering panic among the rest. Suddenly, the balance of power shifted. Fear surged through the crew like a tidal wave, flooding out their previous confidence. Unable to comprehend that they had distanced themselves from their original goal to ambush a helpless farmer, they became disoriented, their laughter replaced by cries of confusion. The farmer, standing resolute in the dim light of the barn, recognized this moment the crisis of confidence that changes everything. Psychologically, it's a well-documented phenomenon known as sudden escalation, where individuals rapidly lose their ability to effectively function under duress. What began as a hunt for easy pickings became a visceral fight for survival. The crew fractured, each member grappling with their own instinctive response to fear. Their bond of camaraderie, so solid just moments before, began to crumble under the pressure, sending shockwaves of panic through their ranks. They had entered a labyrinth of vulnerabilities, and the farmer, a seasoned strategist, was orchestrating the chaos with a precision that made each strike resonate like a symphony. With the first trap sprung, the farmer moved deftly behind a stack of hay bales, his mind razor-sharp, and focused on the chaos that played out around him. Here was a man who understood the terrain, who had spent years observing every contour of his land. Unlike the crew, entangled in fear, he analyzed, adapted, and anticipated. As the crew stumbled and shouted, desperately trying to regroup, their frantic movements became predictable. The farmer leaned into his prior experiences, recalling operations where knowledge of an adversary's behavior could be the difference between life and death. He knew that with chaos swirling around them, the time for calm, calculated responses had arrived. When one of the bikers, desperate to reclaim possession, charged forward blindly, the farmer struck back with precision. He flung a shovel, a commonplace tool repurposed into an instrument of warfare, catching the biker off guard as he tumbled with a thud to the ground. The sound reverberated through the barn, a stark reminder to each remaining crew member of the stakes at hand. In a fight, we learn that our perceptions of power can easily shift. The confidence once held by the motor crew shattered beneath the weight of dread. Each attacker, hardened by their history of chaos, began to panic, their minds racing as they wrapped themselves in a cocoon of fear and uncertainty. They had crossed into sacred ground where their bravado meant nothing. They were no longer the hunters but the prey, each round of laughter turning to cries that echoed off the barn walls. The psychology of survival shines brightly in moments of dire conflict. The farmer, embodying emotional fortitude, felt the sense of purpose swell within him, a warrior spirit offering him strength amid adversity. It reminded him that grit isn't just a measure of strength. It's a refusal to yield in the face of danger, embedded within our psyche, propelling us to act in the name of what we cherish most. As the ambush continued, the farmer moved with the practiced calm of a soldier, a mindset formed from experiences that had instilled within him the understanding that a wise warrior harnesses every advantage. And amid that chaos, he found profound clarity. The barn, once a backdrop for solitude, had transformed into an arena for survival, an ingenious battlefield that would serve to protect not just land, but legacy. Desperation clung to the crew as they gathered again. The flickers of their previous confidence burned low. With each passing moment, they seemed to dissolve like smoke. One of them yelled out, attempting to rally the others, clutching the frayed threads of their passion, but that effort merely echoed hollowly within the expansive walls of the barn. Frantic calls for unity only led deeper into the realm of confusion. Their fear deepened their divisions even further. In this whirlwind of chaos, they stood as mere remnants of what they once were. Fear is a cruel teacher, and the lessons learned in agony are often the hardest to swallow. They couldn't clarify their intentions with the strength they once assumed they had. The very energy that had propelled them forward now drained away like sand through fingers. But just as the farmer seized this opportunity, he sensed a change in their demeanor. They were not entirely broken. Like a cornered animal, they began to growl, calling out to one another with echoes of defiance. The farmer understood desperation seeping into their hearts could lead to one of two outcomes: a rushed retaliation fueled by raw adrenaline, or a desperate retreat that rendered them helpless. In that tension moment, he realized the fine line between survival and defeat. He recognized their instinctive need for survival bowing to their once fearless nature, and as adrenaline surged through him, he poised himself, ready to adapt once again. What would unfold now? Would desperation drive them to a final stand, a rallying charge against the steadfast farmer, or would the weight of their fear finally push them into retreat? As the scenario played out, a clash of ideologies and wills, both farmer and crew stood at a precipice. Each breath hung heavily in the air, rippling the fabric of fate as both sides prepared for the inevitable confrontation that could reshape their destinies forever. The stage was set under the waning light of the day, the barn caught between shadows and the last rays of sun, enveloping this struggle with an air of uncertainty. The battle lines drawn, the story hung in the balance, waiting for the winds of change to sweep through and remind them all that in the end, survival is an instinct forged in fire. And tonight, that fire was about to reignite. In this high-stakes game, every decision, every action would determine their fates as the moment unfurled, its truth lurking just beyond the threshold, ready to reveal itself.